Hello, my name is Peyton Bean and welcome to my week 4 experiment. This week we are doing an experiment on elephant toothpaste. So first I'm going to go through our supplies and what we'll need for this experiment. I'm going to show you kind of my setup and what I'm doing. So the very first thing I have down is a towel just in case things get a little bit messy. But the first of the supplies is hydrogen peroxide. Now I only have 3%, so we're going to see if this works today because this is the one that I used for our last experiment. So hydrogen peroxide, technically it's supposed to be 10%, but we'll see if that works. And then dish soap, and I'm just using like a plant-based dish soap. And then food coloring, and I just got some plant-based food coloring as well. This is just like a pinky red, just to show the actual color. And then dry yeast, and I do have a whole packet of active dry yeast. I'm going to show you guys how that's a part of the experiment as well. And then some warm water, which I have piping hot water here because by the time we get to the actual experiment, it probably will be about, room temperature or warm. And of course some glass containers, which I have several of, and I'll show you why and how we're going to use those as well. Okay, so we're going to start with step 1, and I'm going to go ahead and do that in here. Okay, so we're going to add some hydrogen peroxide to a glass container, and honestly, I'm going to fill this up to probably 100 milliliters. We'll do that. Okay, so that is step 1. We've just added our hydrogen peroxide, about 100 milliliters, into a glass container. Once we get to the final portion, I am going to put it on this, and of course it's on a towel so we don't mess things up. Okay, step 2, we're going to take a little bit of our liquid hand soap, and I'm just going to add, kind of eyeball it, just add like a tablespoon, maybe a half a tablespoon. So that was step 2. We're just adding a few drops of liquid dish soap. And then step 3, we're going to add just a few drops of our food coloring. So again, this is step 3. We're going to add a few drops of food coloring. That was probably like 5 or 6. We'll leave it at that. Okay, so we're moving on to step 4. So I've got this mixture, which I haven't really mixed together, but I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So this is just liquid soap, hydrogen peroxide, and the food coloring. So that's what that mixture looks like. I'm going to set that aside. We're actually going to set that in here. And then we're going to go ahead and do the yeast mixture. So I'm not exactly sure how much yeast to use, so I'm going to use just a little bit of this pack. I don't want to use the full thing, just for mess sake, which I already just made a mess, but that's okay. All right, so actually I'm just going to go ahead and do the whole pack. And then we'll go ahead and mix the warm water. You can see that kind of activating. It's already getting kind of sludgy, which is nice. Smells interesting. Okay. So we'll set that aside for now. Okay, so I let that sit and mix for just a few minutes, and now we're back. And I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit further how we're doing this. Okay, so I've set this inside of a dish, obviously, but this is our first mixture. I just want to go ahead and remind you, hydrogen peroxide, liquid soap, and a little bit of food coloring. And I went ahead and mixed that really well. Make sure that's nice and mixed up. And then our warm water and our active dry yeast. So we'll see. Hopefully this doesn't make an entire mess, but we'll see what happens here. And it's working. Sweet. That's super neat. Wow. Super cool. I think if I had had like a more cylindrical beaker, it would be even cooler, but it's definitely working. And you can see that oxygen kind of rising out of the hydrogen peroxide. That is really neat. Cool beans. Okay, so next we're going to actually talk about what the actual chemical reaction is that's happening, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. So the reaction that's happening is the yeast that we mixed up with the warm water is actually acting as a catalyst to, again, separate that oxygen from the hydrogen peroxide. So the foam that's happening in here, which you can see, is actually a result of oxygen-filled bubbles that form from the hydrogen peroxide being broken down into water, or H2O, and oxygen, or O2. And this results as an exothermic reaction where heat is revealed. So what's happening is everything's super warm. So like I said, this was pretty piping hot, but by the time I settled the yeast mixture down, it was kind of warmish. And then now that exothermic reaction is actually happening, and it's becoming really warm, and that's where that foam is coming from too, because that the yeast is acting as that catalyst to kind of push those molecules apart and separate the oxygen from the hydrogen peroxide. So that was a super cool, it actually smells really good too, super cool experiment, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.